I wanted to make a quick comment on some of the utterances that we have been seeing played out in the media space, starting with a comment from the opposition PNP, and specifically from Peter Bunting, who is the shadow spokesperson on national security. And I wanted to highlight this comment because, you know, this country has been kept back to a large extent because of crime and the fear of crime. And I think it's important, particularly in this current dispensation, when Jamaicans are being asked to decide who is the best party, political organization to carry this country forward, to appreciate the difference between the PNP and the Jamaica Labour Party. And I think Peter Bunting has offered an opportunity for the country to zero in on what this difference means for them, for their families, for their communities, for their freedom of movement, for their businesses, for their own safety and security within their space, which, as we know, has been a major debilitating factor in our country. Mr. Bunting, at his party's manifesto launch, and as reported in the media, speaks to this difference between the PNP and the JLP from a crime-fighting standpoint, describing, and I'm quoting here, the JLP having a warrior mentality among the security forces, while the PNP promotes a guardian mentality. You know, on the face of it, I really gave it an earnest effort to try to understand what he means by that, and had a difficulty coming to terms with that interpretation based on his own track record as a former Minister of National Security, and certainly the track record of the PNP in terms of fighting crime, when juxtaposed or compared with what this government, this Jamaica Labour Party government, has done. Firstly, I want to say that given the heinous nature of the crimes that we have seen in this country meted out on innocent Jamaicans, sometimes it does take a warrior mentality to respond, and to respond within a context, not to disregard human rights, as some would want to claim, but to respond in a way that will recognize the seriousness of these crimes and why it is important to assert yourself as a state, as a police force supported by the army, and indeed by all of us, in order to face down the criminals and the criminality that has been taking place, and to achieve the ultimate objective of making our society safer. So he may, Mr. Bunting, that is, not realize that he may have been complimenting the Jamaica Labour Party strategy by recognizing that you have to assert yourselves in the midst of a crisis. And we have had, for generations, a crisis of crime and violence, and it has taken its toll in many ways on our society. His comments, I think, too, are somewhat condescending, not somewhat, but condescending of the security forces, because implicit in what he's saying is that somehow the security forces are conducting themselves in a manner that should not be supported. And that's the interpretation, because let's face it, the government prescribes policy, the security forces implement. They are the operational agency of crime fighting. And in criticizing us as a government, he's also technically criticizing the work of the security forces, even though I've heard him say otherwise. But in this case, this is how it comes across. And he needs to clarify that. We believe that the security forces, based on government policy and government support in terms of resources, in terms of additional manpower, upgrading of stations, additional mobility, additional intelligence gathering, have done a commendable job. And the manifestations of that is the significant reduction in serious crimes, well over 40%, closer to 45% year to date, 43% to be exact in terms of murders. And that for me means, for us, means a safer society and a society where Jamaicans can move about more freely and pursue their ambitions in whatever way, shape, or form, particularly in communities where they once had to close their doors early and live in fear. And this is not something to criticize, this is something to commend. And I think that Mr. Bunting is way off course in his description of how we have approached responding to crime and violence. The other thing I'd say is that he needs to be reminded of his own legacy. He needs to be reminded of his own legacy. First of all, we have 318 fewer Jamaicans that have been murdered this year when compared to 2024. That's the 43% reduction year to date. That's a very good thing. And Jamaicans, I think appropriately so, have applauded the work that this government and the security forces have been doing. Gangs in this country have been cut from 300 when the Jamaica Labour Party took office to under 100s. That's the intelligence that have been made public by the security forces. That is a very good thing. If it takes a warrior mentality to achieve that, it means a safer society. And his lack of recognition of that, to our mind, is an indication that he's out of touch. And if his approach is to do otherwise, whatever guardian mentality means, then what it will mean is that we will see a surge in crime and violence again, which is what we don't want. And the Jamaican electorate must be very mindful of that. His own legacy, I think, demonstrates why he speaks the way he does, because he was not very successful when he was at the wicket as the chief minister or portfolio leader for crime. In fact, serious crimes on average increased by some 60% and 20% spike in the final year of his tenure. So Mr. Bunting did not achieve success, and he's on record of saying a range of things as to why, including the need for divine intervention, which we have no problem with divine intervention, but the Bible does say faith without works is a problem. And he clearly did not do the work. And therefore, we are of the view, simply put, that he neither has the experience or indeed the moral authority to describe the crime-fighting measures that have been pursued by this government and this Jamaica Constabulary Force in a disparaging or indeed disrespectful way. And the country, we urge in this very important time, should take note of that, where we are, where we're going, and what we don't want to return to as they decide how to cast their votes on September 3rd. There is a difference. We agree with him. The difference is we are tough on crime and we are getting results. He wants to cuddle in terms of his approach. And as his own experience has shown, he achieved nothing. In fact, crime got worse.